Are you too cool to fish with a two-piece rod? I've been kind of wondering that for, several years now. I'll be honest, I'm probably like a lot of you guys. When I grew up, all the rods I used were two-piece rods. They've come a long way. But over the last few years, it seemed like a lot of the major manufacturers making the higher-end rods are really going primarily to a one-piece rod. So does that make one-piece rods better? Does it just seem to basically make it like a really, like the cool guys club to have one-piece rods? Well, personally, I'll be honest, most of the rods that I do use these days are one-piece rods. Now, we're not really talking about 3- and 4-piece rods or telescoping rods, those rods that you may consider to be travel rods. I'm talking about your standard everyday rods. Now, back in the day when we were younger, most every rod was a two-piece rod. A lot of them had, metal connecting points or fiberglass, inferior quality. And back then, if you had a one-piece rod, you had a lot more sensitivity to it. But the problem was you often couldn't fit it into your car. Well, a lot of that's changed now. The rod I have in front of me here, for instance, is a TFO with one of my Akuma reels on it. It's a two-piece rod. I love this combo, okay? But, people will still say that one-piece rods are better because you have more sensitivity or the blank is going to be stronger, faster action. Well, yes, when you go from a one-piece rod to a two-piece rod, the action will often change. But does it change that much? Not necessarily. So the whole question is, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it almost seems like, the cool guys use one-piece rods. Now, you may not be able to carry a one-piece rod because you have a very small car. For those of you that may know me that well, I drive a little teeny tiny Toyota Yaris 2-door hatchback. I can still fit a 7-foot rod in there. So I usually go to a 7-foot rod or a 6.5-foot rod, as long as it's long enough to do what I need to do, but I can usually fit it in the car. Or if I'm using my kayaks, I'll slide in the kayak if I got to use something even longer for some reason, but I usually don't. But I still use a lot of two-piece rods. Now, a lot of it's evolved over the years. A lot of your two-piece rods now don't have, the same issues you may have looked at years ago. The blanks are higher quality. You do have a lot more sensitivity. You may have more backbone into it. The actions are still going to be slightly different, but you're not going to have inferior quality. That being said, it does seem like a lot of your lesser dollar rods are still two-piece rods. But it doesn't mean you can't get a quality two-piece rod and use it. So really, the whole thing's up in the air. It's your personal preference, your choice. But I just had to kind of bring it up because I was just going over an order right now for some of my new rods. And I was looking at one-piece versus two-piece. And I started thinking, do I need a one-piece or should I use a two-piece, or does it really matter anymore? But I know back in the day it did matter more, but a lot of us can still get away with a one-piece rod. There's a way you can fit it into your car, into your truck or your boat or whatever. But it's not necessarily uncool to have a two-piece rod. There are some high-quality two-piece rods out there. They may be more convenient for you. They may fit your purpose as well. You may not want to go with a travel rod because think about it. You've got one joint in a two-piece rod. If you go to a travel rod, you're going to have even more joints in it. If you go to a telescoping rod, even more than that. So what really do I think are the weaknesses of a two-piece rod, or even just simply a multi-piece rod? Well, the biggest issue I have is really where the connecting point is. You can actually damage it. So it can get stuck, or if you're fishing with it and you cast, you don't have it snug enough, the end of it will go shooting off down your line. We've had that happen. I've had that happen. I've had it happen on camera anyway. So yeah, your end of your rod can go flying off the end if it's not snug down, or if you're not careful with it, or you don't keep it in a rod bag or something like that, you can damage the joint so it won't go back together properly. Those are the biggest things. There may be a little bit of difference in the feel of the rod or the action of it, but overall you can still get some really good rods. So don't think it's uncool to use a two-piece rod. If it fits you, if it works with what you need to do with it, if a rod feels right in your hand, if it has the right action you want to use, go for it. But I just still think it's kind of odd that a lot of the manufacturers have gone away from two-piece rods, and you still mostly now these days with the higher-end rods, they're all one-piecers. Well, I still like one-piece rods. If I had the preference in a perfect world, I would always use a one-piece rod. But if I'm driving my little car, I need to stick it in the trunk or something, it's not always an option. So, your personal choice, depending on what type of environment you're in, what you're driving it in. If you have a big enough, closet in your house to store it in, or garage or basement, your choice. But just because you use a 2-piece rod doesn't mean you're not cool. Sorry, had to vent again. As always, please subscribe to the Fishyaker YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and we'll catch you on the water.
Fishyaker.com, the original kayak rigging video series.